Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here, and today I would love to share with you how to draft and how to sew a really neat pocket that anybody can master and anybody can sew really well. And I truly believe that, and one of the reasons why I really love this pocket is because it's very versatile. You can add it to any of your patterns anywhere where there's a seam. So you can add it into a side seam, into a horizontal seam, let's say a yoke seam, even a waist seam. And here I have a couple of examples to show you exactly how that looks, so that way you can see all of the possibilities. In case of these circle culottes, we have a pocket hiding in a side seam, nearly invisible. When on the body, it doesn't pucker, which makes it a great option for a variety of pants, shorts, skirts, and other garments. Now this is also a great option when you don't want to break up the print or do any of the print matching in a regular pocket. In this jacket, this same type of pocket hides under a flap and is inserted into this decorative seam. In these green pants, the pocket is also located in the side seam, this time slightly different with the top stitching visible, and also this is a pocket that's completed in a French seam. And these are just a couple of examples. Obviously, sky is the limit, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and start with the drafting steps. First, we will need to determine where we want our pocket. It could be in a side seam of a skirt, in a side seam of a pant or shorts. It can also be in a horizontal seam, like for example here in the jacket, or here at the waist. The principle for all of these is going to be exactly the same. For this example, I'm going to be working with a kid-size culotte pattern. We have the front and we have the back. For now, we will need only the front pattern piece. Now, you might be familiar that when I draft my paper patterns, I actually don't add seam allowances to the pattern itself. Instead, I add them when I cut my fabric. In this case, I went ahead and I marked the seam allowances, specifically the side seam one, because we're going to need that in the process of drafting the pocket. This pocket is going to be anchored at the waist seam with an opening in a side seam, just like the two pants example that I showed you at the beginning of this video. To determine the size of the pocket, I simply use my hand, I place it down, and then you can just roughly pencil around it. Next, I'm going to outline the pocket bag that I have penciled in. Here is about 90-degree angles, and here is about 90-degree angles as well. Now we're going to mark the entrance of the pocket. I personally do that, let's say about a couple inches down the waist seam, but it can vary and you can really use any number that you would like as long as the pocket is going to be comfortable. For the width of the entrance of the pocket, you'll just need to make sure that you can actually fit your hand through that. In my case, I took the same distance from the waist to the opening as from the bottom of the pocket to the bottom of the opening. Now, if you're struggling with the process of where to place your pockets and how low or how high, how big the pockets should be, I have a very simple but very effective tip for you. Go ahead and take a look in your closet. Take a look at all of the clothes that you already have, and even if you don't like the pockets that you have there, that's a really good indicator for you that perhaps you like really big pockets, so make your pockets bigger. Or perhaps all of the pockets that you have sit lower or higher, and that is just not the right positioning of the pockets on your body. So use what you already have as sort of the starting point, whether you like it or not. That's going to be a good indicator to making the right decision in the case when you're making your own clothes. Next, I'm going to take an extra piece of pattern drafting paper. I'm going to place it on top, and I'm going to copy the entire pocket, including the waist seam allowance and the side seam allowance as well. I'm also going to copy all of the other markings that we have made. For the grain line of the pocket, I usually use the same grain line as it is on the pattern itself. Since currently we have seam allowances everywhere except for this curved line of the pocket, let's go ahead and add them here as well to keep everything uniform. Our pocket is ready. Now we will go ahead and ignore the lines that we have made on this front pattern piece. We're going to cut one front pattern piece and we're going to cut two of this pocket mirrored. Here I have all my pattern pieces cut out, the front pattern piece and the two pocket pieces. As you can see, I have marked the seam allowance on the side and the entrance of the pocket on all pattern pieces. The first thing that I want to do before starting to sew is I want to apply a little strip of interfacing on the wrong side of the front pattern piece, extending a little bit past the top and the bottom mark. This piece of interfacing is about twice as wide as the seam allowance itself, therefore it does extend a little bit past it. And also, sometimes I might apply a little bit of interfacing on the pocket details as well. Personally, for me, it just really depends on the project and the fabric that I'm working with. Once done, let's go ahead and grab our front pattern piece, place it right side up, take one of the pocket pieces, and we're going to place it right side down. So right side's facing, we're going to align them at the top, like so. Now I'm going to sew with a straight stitch this little frame that I have outlined in green. That's the reason why it was important for us to mark the width of the seam allowance. But it's not always the case, only in the situations where I want a pocket like this to be nearly invisible in the seam that I'm constructing. For example, in this jacket, it wasn't necessary. In fact, I wanted to be able to access this pocket a little easier under the flap. Therefore, my little frame actually extended way past the seam allowance. You might want to add about 1/16 of an inch to this frame in order to account for the turn of the fabric. At the sewing machine, I go slow and steady, stopping at the corners, leaving the needle inside of the fabric, and then pivoting. And this is what we have on one side and on the other side. Now I'm going to cut a little bit of this frame out and then clip the corners. Now here I would love to add that clipping is really crucial, because if you don't clip enough, you're actually not going to get a really clean turn of the corner, and the entire pocket is going to look a little bit sloppy, and even good pressing is not going to help. And then of course, if you clip too much, you risk clipping through the stitching line, and then the stitching is going to unravel, and that's another big problem. So whenever I do this, I always tell myself I clip almost to, but not through. Now sometimes I still worry a little bit about clipping into the corners depending on what fabric I'm using and what is the project, so I totally understand if you feel the same way. But there are two things that might help. Number one, I oftentimes decrease the stitch length when I go around the corners in order to reinforce them. And then if I didn't apply interfacing on the pocket piece, let's say it would make it too thick or for whatever other reason, then I might interface just the corners of the pocket piece in order to make them a little bit stronger. Now I'm going to turn this pocket to the inside of the garment and then press it really well. Next, I usually do one of the two options. Sometimes I top stitch this part and sometimes I understitch it. This time I decided to go for a little bit of top stitching. And here I follow exactly the same steps as we did when we first stitched this frame. Now I'm going to take my pattern piece, flip it to the wrong side, take the other pocket piece, place these right sides facing, like so, and now we're going to stitch them together, starting over here, going all the way around the curve and ending here. First with a straight stitch, and then you can finish the raw edges with a zigzag or with a serger. Now here I only did a straight stitch since we're working on a little sample for tutorial only, not an actual garment. Now I'm going to turn everything right side up, grab the back pattern piece for our culottes, which would look like this. In my case, it's just a strip of fabric. And we're going to place it right sides together, like so, aligning at the side seam. And here, when we're going to be stitching, the main point is to stitch right over here on the edge of that pocket without catching it in the seam. Usually, when I sew this pocket, it really helps to feel with your fingers where's the edge of it on the inside, and that I use as a guideline. Or perhaps if you'd like, you can also baste it to make sure that you don't catch the pocket in a seam. After this straight stitch, you will also finish the seam with the method of your choice. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. There is our pocket. The last step is to give it a really good press. Pressing is definitely one of the ways how to achieve a really clean and good result, so don't skip this step. And here's our final result. There's one thing that I wanted to add, that if you did this pocket for the first time and you notice a little gap, for example like this, that means that you didn't come up close enough in your side seam, in your stitching, to the pocket. It's okay, you can do this stitching one more time. It's all going to be within the seam allowances, so don't stress about that. It definitely takes just a little bit of practice, but in the end, you're gonna get a pocket that you can place basically in any seam, which makes it very versatile. I truly hope that this was helpful to you in your future sewing endeavors. And if you want to see how to complete this type of waistband that has elastic in the back and really cute ties in the front, then click on the video right over here. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, happy, thoughtful sewing. Bye!